I have a confession to make. You see, last episode I made a promise that I've since realized I cannot keep. I finished last episode saying that we'd work on the base today, which for the most part is true, we're going to work on it, but we're not actually going to work on it. You see, to build the base I need of course lots of resources, and I've realized I cannot get those resources. At least not in time for this episode. So I kind of feel like I'm letting you all down a little bit. Not being able to give you exactly what I said I would give you. Now, to be clear, at the end of last episode, I genuinely thought I would, start work on the base, right? It's getting a little bit dark for my liking. Let's sleep up in a tree. But the truth is, I just need a lot of wood. So much wood. It's terrible. It's a bit terrifying, honestly. And the thing is, I don't have any bone meal. So this is going to take a while, and that is all time that I don't really have right now. And so, once again, I'm contributing to the stereotype that pirates are terribly untrustworthy, as I am going to have to break my word. Although this does actually go really quite quickly. These trees have a lot of wood in them. So what I figure, while we're chopping down trees over here, I can tell you a little bit more about pirates and their stereotype, right? I mean, I'm fairly certain you've at some point heard about the stories about the untrustworthy pirates that backstab each other and that are only out for gold. But what if I told you there is a lot more to it? Now, to clarify, I am talking here about the late 1600s, early 1700 pirates, right? The pirates in that era. Now, of course, there were a whole bunch of pirates that fit that stereotype very, very well back then. But for the majority, not necessarily. Now, they did have very loose morals. You don't become a pirate for no reason, right? In fact, becoming a pirate was kind of a one-way trip. No one was ever going to look at you the same way again if you committed piracy. But for the most part, being a pirate was simply being a part of a company, essentially, that did things a lot more fair for their workers than other companies did. For example, if you were to sail under the Royal Navy, you were probably not going to get paid nearly as much as you were when you were a pirate. See, pirates, they were a democracy. Most of them anyway. Where every single sailor had just about as much to say as every other sailor. And if you didn't agree with your captain anymore, you could all get together and vote him out. And so essentially you ensured that everybody had trust in the captain, always. And everybody was on board with the mission, right? Because if not, you can always take it up with someone, with the captain. You can bring it up. It was democracy. As for the wages, as I mentioned earlier, as a pirate you'd probably earn a lot more. And that's because wages were shared. The loot was shared equally amongst everyone. Well, almost equally. Typically everything was shared with the sort of jobs that were available. For example, just a regular sailor on a ship would get 1 share. But if you happen to own the ship, you would get 2 shares because you were and a sailor and you had the ship, right? The captain would typically get 2 shares for captaining the ship. And so you see, everything was kind of shared equally. And now, like I said, their morals were typically somewhat loose. Essentially, they did run a business on that ship, and well, they wanted conflict just as little as anybody else would. They had a lot of strategies to avoid conflict, really. For example, raising the pirate flag on their ship just in time was a very interesting form of art. You see, if you raise the flag too early, the other ship is going to flee, right? However, if you raise it too late, they are going to feel like they have no choice but to fight back, and so they're going to prepare to fight. And so, essentially, what you wanted to do is raise the flag just in time that they felt like they could still flee, but couldn't really anymore. And so they weren't prepared to fight, and they couldn't flee anymore, and so essentially, they would just surrender the ship and its loot, right? That was the best way for them to ensure that no one really got hurt. It was really the only option. And while I wouldn't exactly say it's a nice thing of pirates to just randomly start looting ships, it is kind of a business model. And you may be wondering, hey Itchybeard, have you ever looted a ship like that? Well, yeah, of course I have. I actually grew up on pirate ships. It's kind of what I've known my whole life. Now I'm stuck over here. And now I've talked a little bit about the stereotypical pirate, right? How that image isn't always exactly accurate. But don't get me wrong, there were definitely terrible, horrible, ruthless pirates out there. They really did exist, and they really existed for nothing else but their own gain. Now the way I go about it, there is something civil to it. I mean, it's morally questionable what I do, but at least I try to make sure I have as little victims as possible. A pirate name you might have heard of is Blackbeard. Now Blackbeard, he had this really interesting image around him that he created himself. He wanted to be like the devil, right? So what he did in his beard, he put fuses lined with sulfur, and he lit those, kind of make it look like his beard is on fire. I mean, what crazy person does that? Simply the sight of him got people scared. But as it turns out, there isn't actually any records of him actually having killed anyone. Of course he's done some bad things in his life. I mean, he stole a lot of gold and treasure, but he isn't the kind of ruthless pirate that you might associate him with. I am nearly out of dirt. I need more dirt. Let's see, can we get some dirt somewhere? This is all stone. There's a patch of dirt over there. Actually, we can probably just use that to plant things on. Bit like so, and then a bit like so, and then a bit like so. Now I do kind of want to clarify, my message here is not to say that pirates aren't bad in any way. Like I've said, most pirates have very loose morals, but there is a lot more to the story, you know? Like the whole thing about pirates being attracted to gold. I mean, like anyone, they have bills to pay, right? Anybody needs money in this society that we live in. And so when a ship goes down that happens to have a lot of gold on it, that is kind of like a beacon for pirates. They're going to go there, they're going to loot that ship, and that's how they pay the bills, right? Again, is that a nice thing? Definitely not, but if you're a pirate, it's pretty much the only way. I mean, like I've said, once you've committed an act of piracy, no one is going to accept you anymore in society. That was it, you were done. And that is when desperation starts kicking in. And desperate men will start doing desperate things. And desperate things rarely ever lead to good things. Now I believe I've already said this, but piracy was kind of a one-way street, right? Once you had committed an act of piracy, no one would look at you the same way anymore. And so most pirates, they believed it was over for them. There was really only one thing left for them to do, and that is to be a pirate. And so of course they got together and they made their own way of living, right? And they would always look out for each other. My axe just broke. I don't think I have another one. Ooh, gotta go find another one. And so when pirates got together, they would always look out for each other. Well, sort of. As long as everybody acted in each other's interests, of course, that is. But for pirates, being a pirate was all they had. And the people they got to know through piracy, those were the only people they had. And so in the end, they would always kind of stick up for each other, right? Because betray one of your own, it's a bit like betraying yourself. Now that was something that the British knew very well. And so they started offering royal pardons for everyone that had committed piracy. Which was a fantastically great time, because now that one thing that pirates believed, that they couldn't be redeemed, that they couldn't go back to society anymore, that turned out to not be true anymore. And so what do? They are desperate, right? A lot of pirates, they take that royal pardon, but in doing so, they're betraying their brothers, their pirate brothers, right? And so you can imagine that caused a really big divide amongst pirates, which is exactly what the British wanted. Because now they were weaker, and now they couldn't fight back as much anymore. It was a really big win for the British. And now, of course, that marked the end of an era, but not, of course, the end of piracy. Piracy, I feel, will always be around, kind of, in some form or another. At least for as long as there are rules, and for as long as there are people who want to break those rules. And so you might be asking yourself, well, what's the moral of this story exactly? To which the answer is, well, there isn't exactly one. It's just that piracy can take up a lot of different forms, right? It can exist in a lot of different times, different eras. There are modern pirates, of course. The most common pirate right now is probably the pirate that sits at home and downloads DVDs illegally. I'm gathering wood. Why do I have so much junk in my inventory? This is not the time to have junk in your inventory. It's probably also why I wasn't very specific on which pirates I was talking about. I mean, I specified it was late 1600s and early 1700s, but it's not very specific. Because everybody is different, right? There are those who make the rules and those who disagree with those rules. And they get together to make their own set of rules, and there will be those who disagree with those rules, right? If you think about it that way, it's kind of an endless cycle. Sleeping in a tree. Oh, with a beautiful sunset over there. Oh, hello there, wandering trader. What do you have for me? Oh, dirt. It's just kind of what I was looking for. I don't have any emeralds though, I don't think. Oh no, I've got a bunch in the cave. Acacia saplings, do I want that kind of wood? Well, we are kind of in a warm area. We should be fine. We should be able to find some acacia at some point. So no, I'm just going to let you go. Thank you very much. See, not all pirates are ruthless. Also, I'm thinking about it for a little bit now, and I do kind of want to add in a little disclaimer that this video isn't in any way a commentary on any current political landscape. I really just kind of wanted to talk about pirates for a little bit. While I'm gathering up some wood. Oh, I need to replant those. It's going to be really difficult gathering wood when I'm not actually planting trees. Speaking of trees, this is a weird one. You rarely ever see one where it sort of branches out all the way like this and forms a different thing over there. I'm not sure if I just made sense, but I think you can see what I mean. You don't really see this in Minecraft very often. Let's for now dump a whole bunch of this in here. And now I'm lacking the saplings again for that. Okay, brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Any more saplings over here? Oh, hello. Maybe I should just make this area for spruce trees and that one for dark oak trees, and that way we're a little bit organized. Another pirate that I just thought of that also has no record, has no known record anyway, of ever having killed anyone is Sam Bellamy. Oh, there goes my axe again. Now Sam Bellamy's story is a very tragic one. See, he was in piracy for love, believe it or not. Oh, it looks like I need to go smelt up some iron. Let's go do that. You see, the poor guy had fallen in love with this very beautiful woman, but her family wouldn't really let them two be in love. But she, and I forgot her name, I think it was Mary, but I'm not quite sure. I'm going to refer to her as Mary, but I might be wrong there. Mary was also kind of in love with Sam Bellamy, and so her family kicked her out. And that was a really big problem for Sam Bellamy, because he couldn't exactly provide for her. He didn't really have anything. And so he heard about how there was this ship that had sunken. I think there was a really big storm. It was a Spanish ship, and on that ship there was a lot of gold. And Sam Bellamy figured, well, if I get my hands on that gold, I can provide for Mary, and we can start a family together, right? Isn't that beautiful? And so on that journey he became a pirate, of course, because, well, stealing gold, that's kind of an act of piracy, right? During his time as a pirate he really made a name for himself. But like I said, there is no actual record of him ever having killed anyone. Not that we know of anyway. And so he had this big dream of returning to Mary again. The trouble for him was that he got killed, unfortunately, just before he had the opportunity to return. Which I know is a bit of a sad story, but those things happened too. The really sad thing was that Mary was now all alone, and she was also cast out. She was cast out by her family, right? So those were really just a series of very unfortunate circumstances that got together in a very unfortunate way. Which, yes, I am aware is a bit of a sad note to end this whole episode on, isn't it? And so let me attempt to end it on a bit of a more positive one. You see the sea over there? It's calling to me. The base that I want to make, which may not surprise you, is I want to make a ship. And I want to sail out of here. And as it happens, throughout this episode, there is a really good chance I've now gathered enough wood to make that ship a reality. Which means that while I've had to break my promise from last episode that we'd work on the pirate ship today, I can promise you that we'll be doing that next episode. Isn't that fantastic? I kind of think it is. I want to get out of here. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this episode, and I hope to see you the next one, where we're going to build a pirate ship. Bye! Ooh, and maybe we'll recruit him on our boat. He seems like an interesting fella. After all, wages are fair.